if they won't explain why they're doing what they're doing, we have to try to find people who are qualified to explain why they are doing what they are doing. And to that end, I'd like to introduce you to Professor Daniel Falush, who's a geneticist at the Institute Pasteur in Shanghai, and is also currently working on coronavirus outreach. Daniel, thank you for your time. I'm going to probably frustrate you slightly by asking you to treat me like a complete idiot. And could you just start by establishing your bona fides, as it were, what it is you do at the Institute Pasteur in Shanghai, and what your sort of field of expertise is in layman's terms?
Okay, yeah, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, yes, thank you.
Great. So I'm a statistical geneticist. So I look at my day job is to look at genetic variation in bacteria and actually also in humans and interpret that in terms of the processes that have caused it. So I've looked at human ancestry. There's also bacteria in people's stomachs called Helicobacter pylori that has traveled around the world with us and gives us stomach cancer. And I've looked at the variation in that and tried to understand it. So I'm I'm qualified in the sense that I'm the bridge between evolution and epidemiology. So I talk to a lot of people who've been very involved in coronavirus, and I actually happen to have some colleagues in the Chinese equivalent of Port and Down. So
right.
It's been very interesting in Beijing. It's been very interesting to see.
I'm sure, and this is obviously just for clarity and context. It's not in any way sort of a demand that you show us your papers. But what drew me to the thread of tweets that you put into the ether on the weekend was your sympathy for the Prime Minister, which is coupled with a fairly profound conviction that he's got this horribly wrong.
Yes. So, and I have to say, one of the reasons I think that is because I've seen how distant this whole thing has been from everyone in the West.
Yes.
They haven't, within East Asia, within all the East Asian countries, people appreciated, from January that this was going to change their lives for a while. Okay. But in the West, people just haven't seen that at all. They haven't really understood what went down in China, what the problem was, why they took it. Why did China shut its entire economy down for 6 weeks, essentially? And people haven't kind of grasped that message. So I think Boris is one of many people, including, in fact, many scientists who've actually failed to grasp that message, why this is such a serious threat, why it needs to be done. And I think so. I'm sympathetic with everyone. I think that everyone, when they first respond to it, they've got it wrong. I mean, actually, the Chinese response in the first month wasn't very good either, because you really have to understand that this is not business as usual anymore. I think once you do that, things can start to change. But, the very painful thing is that the longer you wait to understand it, it multiplies every week multiplies the problem. So
time, is quite literally of the essence. To pick up on a couple of the points that you make in more academic detail, you believe that the UK modelers, and of course we're still pretty much speculating on what and why they do what they do, but you believe that they've got the numbers wrong. I mean, empirically false is the phrase that you use when you talk of herd immunity, and you think that Chris Whitty made a very telling mistake on this very specific issue during his testimony to the House of Commons Select Committee.
Yes, he did. So he said that there was 20% herd immunity in Wuhan, and so one of the people he's working with
Adam
said
Kuchaski.
It was 5%. I would actually say it was probably 1 or 2% at most, but 20% is just so out of the ballpark, it's wrong. And he kind of hasn't appreciated that, herd immunity had nothing to do with stopping this epidemic. It's clear.
Again, apologies in advance if I'm even stupider than I need to be, but the explanation we're receiving, irrespective of herd immunity, is that we have to do what we're doing because otherwise when everybody emerges from, if we did clamp down harder in the way that the Chinese have, then when everybody emerges from this quarantine, from these periods of isolation, and it's not far off 100 million people in China who have been in this scenario, then we have been told by our government and its scientific advisors that is likely to see a massive resurrection in the virus, a massive resurgence.
Yeah, so I think, So I think another thing that people haven't understood is that actually the thing about the quarantine is that you should go into it as fast as you can, okay? But actually, you kind of come out of it step by step. Okay, so I came back to Shanghai like a month ago, okay, and then all of the restaurants were closed, and you could go food shopping, and there weren't too many people on the streets, okay. But basically, it's kind of opened up step by step, and really, what they've been doing is saying, well, we can do these extra things, we can live this way more, and it still keep the virus under control. And then you just expand it, okay?
Yes.
And basically, what the world is going to have to go through is that, travel will be curtailed until it is consistent with being able to keep the virus under control. And it's technologically possible, but we have to reorganize our society to do it. But until we reorganize our society, we have to shut everything down.
And they're not doing that yet, although, as with everything in these sort of conversations, it's important to stress that the yet is the crucial word. They could literally do it tomorrow or indeed later today. But I just want to, finally, if we may, and with your permission, hopefully we'll talk to you again in the coming days, but you write that Chris Whitty somehow implies that herd immunity helped to bring the epidemic under control. And again, I'm grateful to you for your sort of generosity of spirit in this analysis, because you say that you think he's telling the truth as he knows it. So there's no suggestion of malpractice or malfeasance, but most of his testimony, you add again, is accurate and informative. But on this single simple point, you think he's got it confused, and that's why he's making an illogical, false argument.
So, yes. So there were coronavirus outbreaks throughout China. Okay, they were more serious in some places than the other. Basically, the larger the outbreaks, the slower it took to solve the problem.
Yes.
Okay, so in Shanghai, there were 300 cases. It was very impressive. Shanghai is a big transport hub. People say that Singapore is great, but Shanghai did even better, in my opinion. But,
yes,
they cured it in a month. Okay, in Wuhan, it took 3 months.
Because there were so many more people. Because there were so many more people with it.
Yeah, because they let it go stages further.
Right.
Okay. So the longer you leave it, the further it will be to come out. That's that's a key message. The sooner we shut down, the less people will die, and the faster it will be to get back to normal life.
That is the World Health Organization's advice as well, and most other countries in Europe are following it, while the United Kingdom isn't. If I had to précis everything that I've learnt from you in the course of this conversation, it would be that in good faith, our government is pursuing the notion that herd immunity plays a crucial role in controlling coronavirus, but the evidence from China simply refutes that.
Yeah, and everyone who really knows about this outbreak is completely alarmed by the UK strategy. It's catastrophic. Right.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. As I mentioned to you, Daniel is a professor at the Pasteur Institute in Shanghai, a geneticist at the Institute Pasteur in Shanghai. And hopefully we will be able to talk to him again in the coming days. So there it is. Whitty somehow implies that herd immunity helped to bring the epidemic under control, and he is telling the truth as he knows it. Most of his testimony is accurate and informative, but in Daniel's view, is an informed and evidence-based view, but nobody's infallible, Whitty is confused on this point and therefore making an illogical, false argument. It's certainly fair to say that there seem to be attempts to distance the government from all the claims made about herd immunity last week from some of their, shall we say, less critical friends in the media over the course of the weekend. It's 11:02.
On your radio.